All right, so I am going to do a demo for week 3, day 2. I'm pretty sure you got everything submitted except for this function quiz, which I sent some flashcards for that. I guess just let me know if you could open them and everything because it was the first time I've used that website. And so those flashcards have every question that's on this quiz. Same for this quiz for the objects. I made some flashcards for that, and it has every question and the answer for those questions. Day 1, we did Monday. I didn't do a demo for this one because I did it in class on Monday. So, but you've kind of already started this. The main thing is the boilerplate. We need sections, like with mine, I had a header and a footer, and then the other sections I kind of wrapped in divs. We need to link a style sheet, and then style everything. So index and then style sheet, and then we need 4 sections. So we need like the about section. So like the mission statement, products and services, which can be represented in the bootstrap cards, and a contact form and a footer. So that's all for this day 1. Um, so now I'm going to move on to day 2. So with day 2, we're going to be using the form that we created for the day 1 landing page. We're going to be using document.getElement by ID to get the elements from our HTML, and then we'll get the value of those inputs. So whatever the user inputs in those inputs, whatever the user types into those inputs, and then when they hit submit, we'll catch the value of whatever they typed in there, and then we're gonna save it to an object, and then we'll console log their information. So in the instructions, we're gonna locate our form, add the submit button, and then we'll do the JavaScript for that. So I'm gonna go to VS Code, and this is the page that I worked on Monday, and here's the form that I did. What I was going to do was I was going to delete this and kind of recode it step by, so you can kind of have a step by step of the form, because I'm not sure if you have a lot of experience with forms, because with the code.org, y'all it was a little different. So I'm going to delete this and then recode it step by step, so you have like a little guide for that. I'm just going to go ahead and delete it because I wanted you to see what the finish looked like. So the first thing I do with my forms is I wrap the whole form in a div. Okay. And so then with this form, I'm going to get a name, an email address, and a message, and then we'll need a submit button. So usually what we do with the forms is we group, so each input needs a label. So we group each group into a div, and then inside that div we'll have the label and the input, and we'll do that for each input group. So first I'm going to do a div, and then inside that div we'll do a label, and for the for attribute will be contact name, and then inside the tags will be name. And then we need to do an input, and we'll leave the type attribute to equal text, and then we need an ID, and it has to be the same as this for attribute. So contact name. All right, so with the ID, the for and the ID are kind of connected to each other. That it lets the browser know that this label is for this input. And then we also need the ID to get that element, get that input element from in our JavaScript. So that's why we need this ID as well. So as you can see, we have our name and our input. With Bootstrap, you see how the name is like all the way to the left side. We could wrap our form in a container class to kind of move it over a little bit. So what I do is I go to the div that is wrapped around the whole form. So the first div, and we'll do a class, a Bootstrap class, and it's going to be container. And you see how it moves our name and input group a little bit over to the right. So there's also another, see they're next to each other. So in the form I did on Monday, the name was on top of the input and then the input was under the name. So we can add that style by using Bootstrap class. So it would be inside the label opening tag. You could do it after the for contact name. So we can do class equals form dash label. And then for the input, we'll do the same thing, but it's a little, the class is different. So it's going to be class equals form dash control. All right, so as you can see, the name, the label, that's what this name is the label element. And then we have our input. So Bootstrap usually makes it a little wider. It gives it like this blue color around it when it's clicked. And it has like a border radius and some padding. So it kind of gives it a nice little style. All right, so we're going to move on to the next group, which is going to be for the email. So we're going to wrap that group in a div, and we're going to need a label. And for the for attribute, we're going to name it contact email. And then inside those tags, we'll write email address. And then we'll do an input for that. And the type is actually, we're going to change it from text to email. And with the type email, it kind of validates the input. So it knows that it's automatically going to look for an @ symbol and a .com and the like domain like Gmail or Yahoo. So it automatically makes the user put in a valid email address. Oh, we need an ID, and it's going to have to match that for, so we'll name it contact email. All right, and so we see we need to add our Bootstrap classes to our label and our input for the email address. So we'll go to the opening tag of the label and do class form dash label. And then we'll do the same for the inputs, class form dash control. Okay, and so you see how you notice how this input and this label for the email address, they're really close together. So we can fix that with Bootstrap classes as well. So in the div that wraps the label and the input, we could add a class. It's margin bottom, so shorthand for that would be MB-3. I usually go with 3 with forms. And so we'll do that again with the div that's wrapped around the email group, class equals MB3. All right, so the third group that we need is going to be for the message. We're going to use a text area instead of an input. Let's see, so we'll do the div first, and then we need a label. The for will be contact message. And then in between those tags, we'll do message. And then we can go ahead and do the Bootstrap classes for the label. So after the for contact message, we'll do space and then class form dash label. And then after our label, we'll put, instead of the input, we're going to use text area. We don't need the name. And then the ID will be the same as the for the label, so contact message. And then we'll add the bootstrap class for that, form dash control. All right, so now you see how the little, it's a bigger input area, and you can also adjust the size of it by moving it this little corner over here. And then we'll give this div, the div that wraps around the label in the text area, we'll give that a class, a bootstrap class of mb-3 to give it some space at the bottom of this div. So finally, for our form, we're going to need a button. And I will label this button submit. All right. So we see how our button, this is like the standard HTML button. So Bootstrap also has classes that style the buttons. So we're going to go to the opening tag of the button and we'll add class btn space btn dash primary. So Bootstrap has a lot of built-in colors, and primary is going to be the color. So primary is going to be blue. If we change it to like btn dash danger, it goes red. btn dash warning is going to be like an orange color. And then like success is green. So we're going to go with primary because it matches the overall theme of the page. So you can see that it added some padding, it added a different text color, the background color, and a border radius. It also has this hover effect to it, and it's all in this one little snippet of code. Does all that to that button. So that's it for our form. Oh wait, I kind of wanted to add, we need to add some, I wanted to add a border around the form and a border radius, and then we need to add a H1. So I'm going to go to the div that is wrapped around the whole, all the groups of the label and inputs in the button. So around this whole section where we have the class container. If you put your cursor after the R in container and press space, we can add multiple classes. So to do a border, it's border. Okay. If I want to make the border thicker, we have to do border -2, or I think it goes up to 5. So it would be border space border -2, and then I want to make it have a border radius, so that class is rounded, and then dash however thick you want it to be. And so I'm just going to go with 2. Oh wait, let's try 4. Okay. And you see how the name is like really close to the border. I'm going to give it some padding. So P for padding, dash, and then I'm going to just do 4 and see what that looks like. All right. So now I want to add like a header above here that says contact us to kind of let them know what this form is for. So we'll do an H1 because all my sections are in H1s. Contact us. And then I'm going to give it a class of display 5. So, did I spell it wrong? Yeah, I did. Okay. You see how it made it a little bigger and thinner, so it matches all my other H1s on the page to be consistent. All right, so that's it for our form. And so the next thing we're going to need to do is add our script file to our HTML. So I already made a script file and I named it day2, but you can name it whatever you want. I just did it day2 because I knew, just to know what, for the assignments and everything. So in order for us to connect our script file to our HTML, we use the script tag at the bottom of our page, at the bottom before the closing body tag. And then we'll use the source attribute, which is src equals, and then the name of your file. So it has to match, so it knows where to find the code. All right, so that's connected. And then we're going to go to our JavaScript file. What I like to do a lot is when I'm adding my files and stuff, you can do a console log, parentheses, and then in quotes, hello from day2.js. So this way, when we go to live server and we inspect it, this hello from day2 will log in the console, kind of like a proof of life. So you right click and then click inspect and go to the console, and we see that this hello from day2 is logging in our console, and it says the name of the file, and that this part right here is the line that it's coming from. All right, so we'll go back to our instructions, and it says locate your form, use the form we previously requested from the landing page project. We already added a submit button, and then we want to implement data retrieval. So the first thing we'll do in our JavaScript our JavaScript file is create a function. So when we're creating functions, we use the keyword function, space, and then the name of your function. So I'm going to do save user. So we name the function followed by parentheses, and then after the parentheses, we'll have curly brackets. And then inside those curly brackets is going to be our code. So another thing I like to do first when I make functions is I'm going to console log, and then in parentheses, button was clicked. All right. So the way to connect this function to our button, because that's where the interactivity is going to happen, is when the user clicks this button to submit. So what you do is there's an attribute in our HTML that we have to use to put it in there. So I'm just going to do it. Okay. So we go to our button element. You find your button element in your HTML, and you go to the opening tag of the button. So you can do it after this class for the BTN class. Press space and do its on click. So on with a capital C, click equals, and then the name of your function. So sometimes what I do, if it's like a big function name, I just highlight this because we need the parentheses as well. So we'll highlight save user, and then we'll paste it in these quotes. So now our button is connected to our JavaScript. So whenever the user, right now, since we have this console log button was clicked, when they click the button, this right here is going to be logged. So let's try it out. All right, let's scroll to our button. I don't like how this does that. So we're going to click our button and see how button was clicked is logged. And it says day2.js, and then it's on line 4. So we see right there. So that's another kind of proof of life that your button is connected to your JavaScript. So that wasn't in here, not the requirements or anything, but it's just some fun to note, I guess. Robert does that a lot too, so you've probably seen it before. So we wrote our function, and now we need to retrieve the data from our form. So in this case, I'm just going to get the name and the email address. So the way we do that is we use this document.getElementById method. All right, so we're going to declare a variable, let user name equal document dot get element by ID, and then parentheses, and then quotation marks, and this has to be the ID. So this is going to be the ID for the input for the name. So we'll go to our HTML and we'll find that ID for the name input. And I like to copy and paste just in case there's spelling or anything like that. And we'll paste it in these quotes. All right. And so the next step would be, this only gets the element. It doesn't get the value of what the user inputs. So we're going to use this method called .value, and we'll do it after we get the element on the same line. So we'll do .value. And then we'll do the same thing for the email. So we'll name it user email. So let user email equal documents dot get element by ID, parentheses, quotes, and then we'll go to our HTML and make sure we copy the correct ID for the email address input. Paste that in there, and then we'll use the .value. All right, so we retrieved the data from the form. All right, so it wants us to save to an object. So what I'm going to do is above our outside of our function, we're going to initialize an empty array to push our objects to. So we'll do contacts. Just name them contacts. And then equals, and then empty square brackets. All right, so we have, it's like a global variable is what they're called. And I'm just going to put a comment right there. They're called global variables. So we need somewhere to store that value, the object. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to create a new object inside this function. So we'll do let new contact equal, and then with objects, the syntax for objects are going to be the curly brackets, and then the objects usually have properties and values, like key and value thing. So we know we have a username, so we can do name and then colon, and then in quotes, because it's a string, oh wait, no, not quotes. I'm sorry, my bad. Since we're using this variable, it doesn't need to be in quotes. And so we'll just pass that username variable. And we need to add the user email. So we'll do that we have to do a comma, and then we'll do email, colon, and then we'll pass that variable, that user email variable. All right. So now that we have our objects, we're going to push it to this contact array. Because this way, if we push it to the contact array, we can hold like multiple contacts in there. All right, so we're going to access that array. So contacts dot push, and then in parentheses we're going to pass that object variable. So new contact is what it was called. And then we're going to console log contacts. All right, so we're going to check to make sure it works. So to recap, what we do is we have this global variable called contacts, and it's an empty array. And so with the arrays, we use the square brackets. We declared a function called save user. We did a console log for a proof of life to connect to the button with onClick to our HTML. And then we got the contact name and the contact email from our inputs in our HTML with document.getElementById. And then we use .value to get the actual value of what the user inputs. Then we save this username and user email into a JavaScript object, which we name new contact. And we have a place for the name and a place for the email. And then the next thing we did was we accessed that contacts array and we pushed the new contact into contacts array. And then we console logged the whole array right here. All right, so we saved the retrieved data into an object, proved the data is being successfully captured as an object with the console log, and display the entire object in the browser's console. So let's test it out. Okay, so I'll do Jennifer. I'm just gonna do a random gmail.com. This is a test message. And we're gonna hit submit. And we see that we have this console log right here, and from day 2 on line 20. So if we go over here and we look at 20, that's what this right here is. So if we click this little drop down arrow, we see we have our object, and we have one item in the array, which has my email that I entered and the name that I entered. Let's see. Okay. I think that is pretty much it. We can also add like more objects to this. Look, I'll just do it like this. So we'll open it up and do the curly brackets, and we'll do name, colon, and I'll just do a random name, email, colon, all right, just to print out enough. I just wanted you to see the contacts having more. All right, so let's do this again. Jennifer, Jen at gmail.com. This. And then we'll hit submit. And so now we have 2 items in our array. If we look at it, the first one is going to be the hard-coded one that we have up here. And then the second one we have is going to be the one that we inputted. All right, so I think that is pretty much it for this lesson. Alrighty, let me double check with the instructions to make sure. Display the entire object in the browser. Display, yeah, okay, so that we need a screenshot of our landing page form. So you could probably just go right here and do a screenshot of this right here, and then right click, inspect, go to the console, and we can drop down this array right here, and you can probably collapse all of them like that, and then probably just take a screenshot of this, of the console log of your, just the object that is being logged. We need to take a screenshot of that. And that is pretty much it for, yeah, that is pretty much it. All right.